5 days. That is how long it took for the same model to go from solving 10 open math problems to being the first system OpenAI says it cannot safely let itself use. On Friday, August 7th, OpenAI announced it can no longer rule out that its unreleased model, Astra, has crossed the critical cybersecurity threshold in the company's own Preparedness Framework. That is the highest tier it has ever assigned to anything. Most of the coverage called this a delay. It is not a delay. It is the first time a frontier lab has published the machinery for handing out a capability instead of shipping a product, and that machinery has been under construction since February. This is Astra, Part 3. Quick coordinates, because this story has turned twice in 9 days. On August 1st, OpenAI published 10 results in mathematics and theoretical computer science, and used them to give its next model family a name, Astra. We covered that, and we covered the fight over one of the 10. Then on August 7th, OpenAI published a second post that pointed the opposite direction. Internal evaluations, it said, showed gains in agentic coding and cybersecurity strong enough that it could no longer rule out the critical capability level. Same model. Opposite headline. Read the wording precisely, because it is doing careful work. OpenAI, it did not say Astra crossed the line. It said it cannot rule out critical capability at this time, and that testing is ongoing. That is a hedge, but it is a consequential hedge, because under the company's own framework, the hedge triggers the safeguards anyway. And here is the coordinate that gives it weight. Every previous model OpenAI assessed for frontier cyber ability, including GPT 5.6, Sol, landed one rung lower, at high. Astra is the first thing the company has ever treated as critical for cybersecurity. Two things this is not, and both matter. First, it is not the Hugging Face incident. OpenAI stated explicitly that Astra was not involved in the July breakout we covered at the time. Do not let the two stories merge. Second, it is not a cancellation. Reported the same day, Sam Altman said OpenAI still intends to make Astra broadly available, with the cyber side needing more safety work first. So the product is coming. What changed is the shape of how it arrives. So what does critical actually mean here? In OpenAI's framework, the cyber-critical tier describes a model that can independently discover and develop working zero-day exploits against hardened real-world systems, or take a single high-level goal and plan and execute a novel end-to-end attack with no human direction. Notice there are two halves. The first is a research capability. The second is an operational one. The tier below it, high, described a model that meaningfully assists a skilled human. Critical is the level where the human becomes optional. The response is worth listing item by item, because it is not a press release adjective. OpenAI described isolated testing environments, tighter network and tool restrictions, stronger encryption of model weights, sandboxed execution, universal monitoring of agentic applications of Astra, and chain-of-thought review during training with the ability to interrupt activity mid-run. Internal work that does not meet those guardrails is paused. Read that as what it is. That is a containment regime for something the company already has inside the building, not a schedule slip on something it does not. Here is the connection almost nobody drew between the two announcements, and I think it is the real story. The math results shipped as lean proofs, machine checkable, which means the model got a hard automatic yes or no on every attempt. Exploit development has the identical property. It works or it does not, and the target tells you. Both reward long-horizon search against a verifier. When Altman demonstrated Astra to senators in late July, the pitch was multiple agents splitting a hard project, working in parallel over long stretches, then pooling their results. That is a description of a proof search. It is also a description of a campaign. Which brings us to the part that has gone almost entirely unreported. OpenAI built the door before it built the thing that needed one. Go back to February 6th of this year. That is when the company began requiring identity verification for cybersecurity-related tasks under a program called Trusted Access for Cyber. Not a research paper. A gate. It has been widened steadily since. A broader defensive push published in April. Then in May, a version scaled specifically around GPT 5.5 and a Cybertune variant of it. Then in July, it got physical. OpenAI told individual trusted access members that to keep access to frontier cyber models, they must turn on advanced account security using a hardware-passkey, with weaker fallback methods deliberately disabled. The deadline is September 1st, 2026. That is 3 weeks from today. Now put that sequence next to the August 7th news, because the ordering matters. A company does not mandate physical security keys for a program in July because of something it is going to discover in August. What is it like to actually walk through that door? On Hacker News, practitioners describe the process in unusual detail. Verification runs through a third-party identity provider with a live selfie, and by several accounts you do not need to prove you work in security at all. Some users passed in about 2 minutes. Others cleared identity checks and were still rejected by something opaque they could not see. One person reported failing repeatedly on their main account and having to register a second one. And several described hitting guardrails anyway, once the work moved from finding a flaw to writing a working proof of concept. There is a second gate above that one, and it is governmental. Under an executive order signed on June 2nd, the United States government gets voluntary access to frontier models for up to 30 days before wider release. That is not theoretical. OpenAI's own GPT 5.6 launch was staggered under it, going first to roughly 20 vetted organizations between June 26th and July 9th. So stack the layers. Government review first, then an approved organization list, then verified individuals holding physical keys. Astra is not going to launch. It is going to be provisioned. Now the objection that makes all of this uncomfortable, and it comes with receipts. When Hugging Face investigated the intrusion into its own systems, it first tried frontier models behind commercial APIs. It did not work. The forensic work required submitting large volumes of real attack commands, exploit payloads and command and control artifacts, and the provider's safety guardrails blocked it because those guardrails cannot distinguish an incident responder from an attacker. In Hugging Face's own framing, the attacker was bound by no usage policy, while their own forensic work was blocked by the guardrails. So they switched. Hugging Face ran the analysis on an open-weight Chinese model, GLM 5.2, at 753 billion parameters on their own infrastructure, which also meant the attack data never left their environment. More than 17,000 recorded events, processed in hours instead of days. Sit with the shape of that for a second. The defenders of one of the most important pieces of OpenAI infrastructure in the world could not use American frontier models to defend themselves, and the thing that unblocked them was a model with no gate on it at all. And the offensive side is already running on ungated tools. On July 30th, Palo Alto Networks Unit 42 published an analysis of a live campaign by a Chinese-speaking actor using the handles Nave and Canyuan. Orchestration ran through an open-source agent framework called Hermes Agent, with DeepSeek as the reasoning model, and the operator had also trialed Claude Code, Codex, Quincode, GLM, Kimi, and Minimax. 7 CVs targeted. More than 460 systems attempted. 3 confirmed data exfiltrations through a Citrix NetScaler flaw, and command execution on 11 Marimo notebook endpoints. But do not overread it, because the details cut both ways. That campaign was not doing what Critical describes. Its agent downloaded public exploit code off the internet and threw it at targets. Of 84 Langflow instances it enumerated, exactly 1 turned out to be vulnerable. That is industrialist reuse of known attacks, not autonomous discovery of new ones. Which is precisely the gap the Astra disclosure is about. Today's ungated tools mass-produce yesterday's exploits. The gated one is claimed to find tomorrow's. The asymmetry is real. It just is not here yet. For coordinates, look at what actually shipped while Astra sat behind a gate. On July 27th, Microsoft launched its first cybersecurity model, OpenAI Cyber 1 Flash, alongside an agentic security platform called Project Perception, which went to public preview on August 3rd. Mustafa Suleyman said the model beats Gemini, GPT 5.5, Cyber, GPT 5.6, Sol and Mythos 5 on CyberGym, the field's main benchmark, and Microsoft claims world-class performance at half the cost of leading models. Note the design choice. That is a small, specialized defensive model, not a frontier generalist. Anthropic occupies a third position. It has been running cyber capability in the open since April, when it assessed Claude Mythos preview and then pointed that capability at defensive work through Project Glasswing. It also runs its own verification program, which practitioners describe as stricter than OpenAI's. Strict enough that people report being refused help with legitimate reverse engineering of software they paid for. So the landscape is not one regime. It is three: gated frontier, shipped specialist, and open weights. And that third regime is the one nobody controls. GLM 5.2, DeepSeek, Kimi K3. On Hacker News, practitioners openly recommend the open models for security work specifically because their safety training is looser, which is the same property that let Hugging Face investigate its own breach. Every tightening at the top of the market pushes both defenders and attackers toward the same untightened bottom. That is not an argument against having a gate. It is an argument that a gate, by itself, is not a policy. To the tape, using yfinance for real closing prices. On Friday, August 7th, the day of the announcement, CrowdStrike closed at $214.42, up about 3.4% from Thursday. Zscaler closed at $168.68, up 3.7%. SentinelOne closed at $21.40, up 3.1%. Palo Alto Networks rose 1.2% to $363.86. Fortinet was the outlier, slipping fractionally to $159.64. Now the caveat, because we are not going to invent a signal that is not there. That was a broadly green tape. NVIDIA rose 2.3% the same day. So a 3% move in a security name is not cleanly attributable to one blog post. The steadier number is the 2-week stretch. From July 28th to August 7th, CrowdStrike ran from $181.80 to $214.42, roughly 18%, with SentinelOne up about 17% and Palo Alto about 14%. None of this is investment advice. It is only what the prints say. So why does this matter beyond one unreleased model? Because the release question has quietly changed underneath everyone. For years, the constraint on who got the best model was price. What OpenAI described on August 7th is a world where the constraint is identity, a government review window, an approved organization list, a verified person, a physical key in a USB port. Capability is starting to determine distribution. Whatever you think of that trade, it is a different industry structure than the one we had a year ago. And the loudest criticism deserves airtime because it is not unreasonable. The Hacker News thread ran to nearly 200 comments, and the recurring complaint was that OpenAI announced a capability shift without publishing the evaluations, the scores, or any definition of what stricter actually means. One commenter pointed out the company still has not fully detailed the earlier incident. There are two honest readings here: genuine caution, disclosed early, or a capability claim that doubles as a case for regulation the incumbent is already built to satisfy. The disclosure as written does not let you tell them apart. So what to watch? And all of these are checkable rather than atmospheric. First, September 1st. The hardware-passkey mandate takes effect for trusted access members. If that date slips quietly, the urgency was rhetorical. Second, whether OpenAI publishes an Astra system card with actual cyber evaluation numbers, and whether any external body confirms the finding independently inside that 30-day review window. Third, whether a second lab ever declares critical, because a threshold only one company uses is a marketing category, not a standard. And the real tell is none of those. It is whether we start seeing intrusions in the wild that no public exploit code can explain. Everything documented so far, including the Unit 42 campaign, is automation of things that were already known. The moment an incident response report says the entry vector had no prior public exploit, the argument stops being about frameworks and tiers and becomes a fact about the world. Until then, this is a story about doors, keys, and lists, and about who is standing on which side of them. That is Astra, Part 3. 10 Math Proofs on August 1st. The first critical cyber rating in the company's history on August 7th. And underneath both of them, a 6-month build-out of identity checks, vetted lists, and hardware keys that quietly decides who gets to use any of it. If the earlier episodes were about what this model can do, this one is about who gets to hold it. We will be watching September 1st. If you want the next turn of this story the morning it happens, subscribe. This has been AI Daily.